Hi, Year 10. This is another video from the Dialogues unit, and we are very near the end of this Dialogues unit. So that'll be 2 units that we've covered during this lockdown, which is great. This lesson is about something called Interfaith Dialogue. So the title is Why and How do Christians Practice Interfaith Dialogue? And the lessons, all the tasks are going to be on the video, and it should be quite short. Let's just see how that goes. But really, there's four things you're going to do. Firstly, there's just definitions. What is interfaith dialogue? Second, I'm going to look at why Christians participate in it. So this is the why do they practice it. Thirdly, we're going to look at why some Christians don't participate in it. So there are some Christians who are against this thing. And fourthly, we're going to look at how Christians do it. When we say how, we really want to just give examples. We're going to look at 3 examples of interfaith dialogue groups in the UK. Before we look at the definition of interfaith dialogue, here's 2 definitions which are linked in the sense that both of these are about kinds of dialogue that Christians might engage in. Now, dialogue means conversation, talking to people. So both of these are things we've looked at before. Ecumenicalism, I think we looked at very briefly in Religion, Peace and Conflict, because I talked about Corrymeela in Northern Ireland. And evangelism, we've looked at mentioned in a previous lesson. I think it was the previous lesson about proselytization. So ecumenicalism is dialogue aimed to create unity between different Christian groups. So, Christians think it's a source of regret for many Christians that there's not unity within the Christian world, that there's lots of different Christian churches. Because, for example, in the Bible it says, there's no difference between people, you are all one in Christ Jesus. So that makes some Christians think that they should talk more to other kinds of Christians and try and overcome their differences. So that's ecumenicalism. So you might get Protestants and Catholics talking to each other and trying to understand each other better. Evangelism is dialogue with people who are not Christians aimed at converting other people to Christianity. So evangelism is when you talk to people for the specific purpose of converting them to Christianity. Now, interfaith dialogue is like evangelism in that it's with people who are not already Christians, but it's different to evangelism because it's not aimed at converting them. So let's look at the definition, which you need to write down on the next slide. Here we go. So interfaith dialogue, when people of different religions meet to discuss their beliefs. It's not about, you need the second part of the definition too. It's not about trying to get people to agree. It is about building understanding and respect between different religions. So that's what it's all about, interfaith dialogue. It's talking to people of other religions, but not with an idea that by the end of it you're going to have changed their mind and they're going to convert to your religion, but just in order to kind of build understanding, build respect between religions. That's the basic aim of interfaith dialogue. So many Christians do take part in interfaith dialogue, but there are some who do not really like this practice, or at least they're a bit wary of it. They're at least suspicious of it in some ways, and we'll see why. So make sure you got the definition down. Okay, so this is our second section overall, but that's just I've kind of just put the key terms first, and then this is our first main section. Why do Christians believe in interfaith dialogue? Well, this first slide looks at one reason. So if you look at these quotes are all designed to talk about the necessity of interfaith dialogue for peace. So Hans Kung is a Catholic theologian, that's a Catholic thinker. He says there will be no peace among nations without peace among religions. There will be no peace among religions without dialogue among religions. So what's he saying there? Well, basically he's saying, if we want countries to live at peace with each other, one of the things that divides countries and sometimes brings conflict between them is that there are people of different religions in those countries. Maybe that is, I think sometimes it's overestimated how much it's a cause of war, religion. In the modern world, I don't think there are many wars that are directly caused by religion, but what it might be is a factor which increases misunderstandings between different people. So say 2 countries are in conflict, the fact that people come from different religions might mean it's more difficult for them to understand each other because they've got a different sense of what the point of life is, what the most sacred things in life are, and those kind of things. So Hans Kung is saying, if we want peace in the world, we need to have peace among religions. If we want to have peace among religions, you've got to talk to each other. because it's only by talking to each other that they can kind of understand, oh, well, we do have our differences, but we've also got our similarities. Or, someone might think, well, I used to think this about this religion, but it turns out I've been misunderstanding it this whole time. A more straightforward quote, and you don't need to write both of these quotes down. One is fine as long as you've explained it. Pope Francis says something similar, but in a shorter way. Interreligious dialogue, which is just interfaith dialogue, is a necessary condition for peace in the world. So in other words, what he's saying is, if you want peace in the world, you have to have interfaith dialogue. And look, here's a quick statistic which you might want to add to say why that's so important. Look, a report published in 2015, it's quite a long time ago now, there's probably a more recent statistics, you might be able to find them, by the Muslim Human Rights Commission, found a rising level of abuse and violence towards British Muslims. Now, that's probably unsurprising given the way that the news has portrayed Muslims, and the link that's created in many people's minds between Muslims and terror attacks. There's been a rising level of abuse and violence towards Muslims in this country. Now, what some people say is, well, what's needed to stop that kind of violence is more understanding, because and it makes a lot of sense, right? Because majority of Muslims, the mainstream Muslim view, is completely against any form of violent extremism or terrorism and things like that. So, you could imagine how an interfaith dialogue between a group of Christians in this country and a group of Muslims about those issues would create peace, because it would create more understanding amongst Christians about what Muslims are really about, and the fact that the groups that have carried out terrorist attacks in the name of Islam, are not really people who believe in what most Muslims believe in, if that makes sense. So yeah, that's one reason for interfaith dialogue, is that we need more understanding between religions, we need more peace between religions, and one way to do that is to get religions talking to each other. Another reason might come from Christian pluralists. So Barbara, I've put Barbara, it should be Barbara, sorry, misspelled her name. Barbara Brown Taylor is a Christian pluralist from the United States. She thinks that all religions are true paths towards God, but each expresses the truth about God in a different way. So she's a Christian, but she doesn't think Christianity is the only true religion. Like all pluralists, she thinks that basically there are many paths towards God, and Christianity is just one of them. For that reason, interfaith dialogue is appealing to people like Barbara Brown Taylor, because they think, well, you know what, Christianity tells one side of the story, but other religions tell us other things about God, and therefore we can learn more about God by talking to other people of other religions. By having this dialogue between people of other religions, we can learn more about what they think about God, and their understanding of God, the way they talk about God, the practices they do, the way they pray to God, might help us to learn more about God, because they've got certain things in their religious tradition which we don't have in ours, but which are equally valuable. For example, so this is her book, Holy Envy: Finding God in the Faith of Others. One thing she talks about in that book is, although she's a Christian, she takes a lot of interest in Hindu teachings about God, because Hinduism, unlike Christianity, Hinduism has quite a long, strong tradition of the idea that through meditation and other spiritual practice, you can kind of find unity with God. That means feel a sense of being at one with God. Whereas Christianity hasn't emphasised that quite so much. So for her, that's a really interesting and helpful part of the Hindu faith. The Hindu faith also has the idea that there are lots of different ways of getting towards God. So you can either be a very active person who does a lot of work in the world, or you can be a person who sits home and meditates. So there's lots of different ways towards God, which again, she says she found really useful. So you've got two reasons to be for interfaith dialogue. One is for peace, and that is a reason that even an exclusivist Christian can believe in. You can be an exclusivist Christian, think that Christianity is the only way towards God, but still believe that peace is important in this world, and therefore it's good to have dialogue with people of other religions, even if you think their religion is wrong. The Barbara Brown Taylor's reason, this pluralist reason, is a much more accepting of other religions, saying actually other religions are true, and they might be able to tell us things about God that Christianity can't tell us. Therefore, it's really good to talk to people of other religions. Okay, let's look at why some people are against interfaith. is our second subtitle. Why are some Christians against interfaith dialogue? And it really comes down to this quote: "No one comes to the Father except through me." So this is the exclusivist point of view. Now, just because someone's an exclusivist, that doesn't necessarily mean they're against interfaith dialogue. You could believe that, like I've just said, only Christians go to heaven, Christianity is the only true religion, but still, that doesn't mean we can't have a dialogue with people of other religions, because it's still important to create peace. It's still important to try and live with people peacefully and understand what they do believe, even if you think what they believe is wrong. So not all exclusivists are against interfaith dialogue, and you need to have it in your notes, but some are. Some at the very exclusivist end of Christianity might say, you know what, there's nothing that other religions can teach me. The only dialogue I should have is to tell them that they're wrong and that my religion is correct and that they need to become a Christian in order to be saved from going to hell. That's the very strongest exclusivist end. So some Christians who are exclusivists would use that quote to say, no, interfaith dialogue is out of the question. Okay, we've looked at why some people are for, why some people are against interfaith dialogue. Let's have a look at some examples. So next subtitle, how do Christians practice interfaith dialogue? I'm going to look at 3 examples of interfaith groups in the UK. So example 1 is the Christian Muslim Forum, and you just need to make notes on each of these groups. So the Christian Muslim Forum creates dialogue between Christians and Muslims for 3 reasons. And all this information I've taken from a YouTube clip, which I've put there. I'll put it in the explanation below the video so that you can watch it if you want to. The 3 reasons given on the video are simply for friendship, to create friendship and understanding and good feeling between Muslims and Christians. Secondly, for joint social action. What they mean there is, if there are things in the world that they want to make better, and both of these religions believe in it, then they can get together to do things themselves. The example is given, I think, is something like, both Christians and Muslims have this idea that they should be stewards for God. They both share that teaching that God created the world and that he gave people the responsibility to look after the world. That means both of them have got an interest in looking after the environment. So that means that Christians and Muslims in the Christian Muslim Forum can get together to do things like work in the local environment, campaigning for environmental issues, because it's something they both agree on. And it kind of goes hand in hand with friendship. By doing something they both agree on, by getting involved in society in a way that they both can say is a good thing, it helps to build that friendship. Thirdly, they meet to share deep truths about their faith. So they get to actually discuss in quite great detail what they believe and the differences and the similarities between what they believe. With Christians and Muslims, it's quite complicated because there are things where they cross over but also have big differences. For example, Muslims believe in Jesus. They believe that he was a great prophet of religion, of God, a messenger from God, but they don't think that he's the Son of God. So by talking to each other, they get to see exactly where they're similar and where they're different. Now, the guy in the video says this is often quite challenging. It's not easy because it's not just a question of they're just going to sit down and agree all the time. They're actually going to talk about the things that they disagree about. But the idea is that by being really clear, by really explaining fully what they believe and why they believe it, it creates more understanding. And the idea is that more understanding can never be a good thing. So more understanding is always a good thing, can never be a bad thing. So those are the 3 reasons: for friendship, for joint social action, to share deep truths about their faith. So make sure you have those 3 things down, especially for the second one. It'd be good if you can explain an example, like I said, working for the environment, to give it a bit more detail. What they do is really simple. They meet to share a meal and to talk. That's all they do. There's no, apart from, that is what the interfaith group does. They meet and talk and usually share food. What they do after that, when it comes to joint social action and those kind of things, is extra. I'll just say something quickly about the video here. The video, and if you watch it, you'll see that guy is actually an exclusivist Christian. So this is an example of interfaith dialogue which exclusivist Christians are involved in. And he talks about how some of his Christian friends, exclusivist Christian friends, have questioned what you should, have said that you should be telling these people to join your religion. You should be trying to convert them to Christianity. But he says actually he believes in converting people, but he thinks that interfaith dialogue is something separate. So he says basically you should have interfaith dialogue on one hand, and then trying to convert people should be a different thing. Otherwise, it gets too confused, and maybe some people from the other religion won't want to take part in interfaith dialogue if they feel that people are trying to convert them. Okay. Second one, presence and engagement. So, presence and engagement is an organisation that was set up by the Church of England. Christian Muslim Forum can involve all kinds of Christians. This is specifically Church of England, which is designed to create dialogue between Christians and people of other faiths. And there's two things you really need to have here in terms of what they do. So the first thing is it runs what's called a near neighbour programme, which provides funding for projects which bring together groups of people of different faiths to improve their neighbourhood. For example, setting up a sports team or improving the local environment. So if you've got in a local area, you've got like a Muslim group or a Jewish group and a Christian group, and the idea is they will provide money for if groups of different religions, Christians come together with groups of other religions and say, we want to do something as a group in the local area. Maybe we'll set up a sports team that's designed to be a sports team for Muslims and Christians so that it creates friendships between those two groups. Maybe we'll do something jointly to protect the environment, to play that role as stewards for God. So that's one thing it does. It's quite similar to the social action part of the Christian Muslim Forum. The other thing about presence engagement is it's not only about bringing peace between religions, it's also designed to help Christians to proselytize or evangelize. That means convert people. Proselytize to people of other religions. The aim here is to spread their religion, but in a peaceful rather than aggressive way. So, part of what it does is setting up social action through the Near Neighbours programme, but it also aims to create dialogue. But that dialogue here is actually linked to evangelism. I said as a whole, interfaith dialogue and evangelism are quite different, but presence and engagement is a bit different. It tries to have meetings where people can share their faith, but also try to spread the faith. The aim is for it to be a way in which Christians can try and promote their faith to other people, but in a less aggressive and confrontational way. So, they want to avoid the kind of aggression that you might see from Christian preachers out in the street. If you see someone with a Bible shouting at people in the streets, you're going to hell, blah, 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 blah. They want to avoid that kind of thing and try to convert people in a less aggressive way. And there's actually a bit in the Bible in which it says that Christians should tell people about their religion, but they should do this with, and here's the quote, gentleness and respect. That's 1 Peter 3:15. So these are the two things you need to know. Near Neighbour Programme, presence and engagement funds people to do projects with people of other religions. Secondly, presence and engagement, it sets up dialogue between religions, but there's, as well as understanding, there's also this aim to spread Christianity, but to just do it in a much more gentle way than Christians sometimes do. Okay, last one, the Maimonides Interfaith Foundation, named after Moses Maimonides, who was a famous rabbi, that's a Jewish teacher. So this isn't a specifically Christian group. This is involves people from all the Abrahamic faiths. Abrahamic faiths are Christianity, Islam, and Judaism. So you need, as well as doing these 3 bullet points, you need to be adding some points I'm making when I'm talking here. So you need to say what the 3 Abrahamic faiths is. It brings those 3 faiths together. And what does it do? How does it bring them together? One, it organises artistic projects which increase understanding between religions. So, for example, I saw one of the projects on their website, and the website links are there. I'll put them in the underneath the explanation of the video. One of the projects it does is it's created artworks based on different religious sites in Jerusalem, which is the capital of Israel. Now, Jerusalem is interesting because traditionally it was the capital of Israel, which was the Jewish homeland in the past. Well, and is Jewish homeland now, but it was historically. And so therefore it's got important buildings of religious significance for Jews. It's also the place where Jesus was killed, executed, and therefore it's got buildings of important significance for Christians. It's also was for many years a place where most of the people lived there were Muslims. So for a long period, most of the people lived there were Muslims, and so therefore it's also got Muslim places of worship. So the artworks created in this in the project they did are designed to show, designed to kind of create a sense of peace between those different religions. Jerusalem, unfortunately, has been a site of conflict between religions. Those religions have not always got on well in that area, but the artwork is designed to kind of promote the idea that actually this could be a place which shows people how to live in peace between different religions. That's the idea, that kind of producing artworks to get people thinking about how religions can live in peace. It also produces this thing called not Internet Explorers, that is wrong. I've been meaning to change that typo for years now, but can you just make sure you don't copy that down? It's Interfaith Explorers. I think I'm just getting confused between the Explorer, the web browser. Anyway, forget it. It's Interfaith Explorers. That Interfaith Explorers is a project that supplies videos and other resources to schools, mainly, usually primary schools, to help children learn respect and compassion for people of other faiths. So they have these little videos. You could watch it. It's on that. There's a link there too. It's like little videos they have these kind of like robot cartoon characters just to help children understand on their level the kind of the issues about interfaith dialogue and how to speak to people of other religions and the differences and similarities between different religions. Okay, last thing. I'm not going to get you to write a question. I'm just going to talk about it a little bit, and you might want to make some notes just so you remember this. So here's a question you might get. Why and how do Christians contribute to interfaith dialogue? Now, the key thing here is when you get a why and how question, you have to do the why and the how. So at least one SEE has to be on why it's important. So you might talk about for promoting peace with the quotes from either Hans Kung or from the Pope. You might talk about Barbara Brown Taylor with her idea about being a pluralist and learning from other religions. You know, I haven't got a quote for. I did look for a quote from Barbara Brown Taylor, but I couldn't find a good one. But you can use her book as the evidence. Her book, and explain what her idea is in that book, that Holy Envy. So you need to have at least one, and it could be two SEEs on why Christians contribute to interfaith dialogue. Then you have to have at least at least one, but it could be two, on how. So you need to have three SEEs in all. So it could be two on why, one on how, one on why, two on how. The how is just going to give an example. So you have to say one example is of how Christians contribute to interfaith dialogue is through the Christian Muslim Forum. And then you just got to give a paragraph there explaining what they do. The tricky thing, I've talked about this before a bit, about this how word, is that sometimes you're not going to be able to get a proper SEE out of it, like statement, evidence, explanation. What you're going to have to do is statement, explain, elaborate. That kind of SEE. So you'd say something like, one way in which Christians engage in interfaith dialogue is through the Christian Muslim Forum. This is an organisation which helps bring Christians and Muslims together in order to build friendships, in order to enable Christians and Muslims to come together for social action that they both agree on, and in order to enable them to share the deepest truths about their religion. And then, elaborate. I would go into detail on what they do. Say that what they do in the forum is really simple. They simply get Muslims and Christians together to sit down over a meal and talk about what they believe. So your why paragraphs in that question are going to be quite straightforward because it's a normal SEE. Your how ones are going to be different because it's not going to be so straightforwardly like a statement of an explanation. It's just going to be, here's the example, and then two sentences about what the example is all about, if that makes sense. Okay, I hope that helps. I hope that made some kind of sense. We've got probably 2 more videos on this unit.